My name is Grace Goheen. I'm the product manager at DBT Labs, focused on our open source product, DBT Core. Yeah. Before I was building DBT Core, I was using it every day as an analytics engineer. I knew how much of a game changer it was to work in this way and wanted to be a part of the team making it all happen. So when I got the opportunity to work on this product that means so much to me and to be getting to do that work in the open, I was ecstatic. Still, I knew I was new, and I had a lot to learn about this piece of software with 8 years of history. I had a lot of questions, such as, why is the unique key config named that if it doesn't actually have to be unique? A Git blame led me back to Drew Bannon. Why are snapshots sandwiched between two Jinja blocks? A long history lesson from Doug that we'll get into later. Why did we decide to make DBT Core open source in the first place? Jeremy's account went something like this. A group of employees at a company named RJ Metrics had the idea for a tool that could create views on Redshift, make sure they ran in the right order, and save the SQL files in a place other than their desktop. Tristan and Drew decided to make DBT open source because they didn't see any reason not to, because CLI tools and programming languages just are open source, because all of the good ones always have been. 7 years later, I stepped into this role, knowing for certain a thing they couldn't have known then, that the decision to make DBT open source is the reason it became what it is today. People found DBT and started using it. Just like me, they saw there was real value in working this way, that it was efficient and collaborative and fun. And that's how the community was born. Problems could be solved once, solutions and code then shared. It became easier to promote and train and hire the people who are doing this kind of work. We've come a long way since then. DBT, the company, expanded from an open source community to a viable open core business, one that can continue to fund the ongoing development of that open source tool. DBT, the product, got a lot more mature. Some very serious customers depend on it in production today. And DBT, the community, is now huge and all across the world. Whether you use DBT Cloud or DBT Core, or some mixture of both, you are a member of this community, and you have a say in what we build together. Now, like any relationship that's lasted this long, we've grown and changed together. So today I want to celebrate that, and I want to recommit ourselves to this relationship for many years to come. So when we said we'd meet next in Vegas, I got this idea in my head that I couldn't shake. So if the white suit hasn't given it away, I think it's time that we renew our vows, me and you, the open source community, Vegas style. Now, thankfully, my friend owns a wedding company in Vegas, and they've agreed to perform the vow renewal ceremony for us. In exchange, they just asked for our help updating their DBT project with the latest and greatest DBT core features, so seems like a pretty fair trade to me. Now, before we can share our vows, I think it's important that we reflect on the past year and look ahead at what's coming next. So this past year, our top priority has been stability for our end users. In 2021, ahead of our 1.0 release of DBT Core, Joel, wherever he is, there you are, Joel, wrote a blog post on our developer blog called How to Upgrade DBT Versions Mostly Without Fear. So many people have read this blog post. It's actually the #2 most read of all time. But this year, we wanted to get rid of that mostly once and for all. So we expanded our test coverage suite to better protect against breaking changes and regressions. We introduced behavior change flags to give people time to adjust to our changes. And we decoupled our adapter interface from core, which matters a lot for our adapters maintainers who historically have had to be incredibly reactive to our open source releases. Today, you can use DBT Core 1.9 with DBT DuckDB 1.8, no problem. And with a stable foundation in place, we were ready to tackle some highly requested additions and improvements to the DBT Core standard. Now, we take our responsibility of maintaining the standard very seriously, and we aim to be really intentional anytime that standard is updated or expanded. One of the great beauties of DBT is that it is incredibly flexible and extensible. A mantra for our team, borrowed from the programming language Perl, is make the easy things easy and the hard things possible. If you have a great enough need, you can hack together pretty much anything you want using DBT. That's one of the real powers of Jinja. It can be thrilling to build a custom materialization, override one of the built-in core macros, or use a sneaky post hook to solve a real need for your data team. And one of the best things about this community is that it has always been a community of practice. We can only get at the right answers by figuring them out together, because the getting there together is what makes them right. Sharing what you've learned in practice helps us all expand our toolkits, solve our day-to-day problems faster, and evolve our understanding of how something should work. Now, our goal isn't for there to be an out-of-the-box solution to every niche problem in DBT. But when we see dozens or hundreds of people expanding or modifying DBT to accomplish the same goal, we're keen to fill that gap because we believe in the value of having a standard. So, as we prepare to renew our vows, I want to tell you about 3 times this happened this year. Unit testing, a new way to test your DBT models, released in DBT Core 1.8, but started as a GitHub discussion by someone in this room back in 2020. Improvements to snapshots, an old feature that was in need of some updates, coming to you in 1.9, which is available as a beta today, and microbatch incremental models, when your data set is just too big for a single query. Started as an experimental materialization back in 2018 and promoted to a native incremental strategy starting in 1.9. For each, yeah. The heart emojis next to them are all very real. For each, I won't just tell you what the feature is, though I promise I will do that too, but I want to tell you about the community conversations and efforts that shaped how the feature was prioritized and built. I want you to leave this room knowing 2 things. 1, I want you to know why you should all upgrade your DBT projects to get access to these awesome new features. And 2, I want you to know that you, as a member of this community, have a say in how this relationship, this shared project of ours, continues to develop into the future. Okay, let's start with the unit testing. So historically, the test coverage capabilities of DBT were limited to data tests, to testing the actual content of your data, like whether or not your primary key is unique. And these data tests are incredibly useful for validating production outputs for unexpected changes, but they're not the clearest, fastest way to validate that your modeling logic is doing what you think it's doing, right? How can you test that your code is properly handling an edge case before that edge case exists in production? How can you validate that your SQL logic is doing what you expect before you spend the warehouse credits to build your entire table? Now, there's a lesson to be learned from software engineers here, one of whom, Michelle Ark, opened the original unit testing SQL discussion in the DBT core repo back in 2020. The feature request was simple. Could DBT tests be expanded to add support for unit tests to validate the expected behavior of your modeling logic using a small set of static inputs before your full model is materialized in production? Now, since then, many community members have contributed to this conversation, and some even developed their own packages or proprietary solutions on top of DBT to add their own framework for unit testing DBT models. This is the community at work. This is the kind of thoughtful practice that makes our community better. But there's limitations with what you can do when you're forced to hack on top of DBT. The packages, for example, had to make use of our existing data test functionality, meaning the unit tests had to be run after the model was already materialized. So it became very clear to us 2 things. 1, there was a real gap in what comprehensive testing should look like for analytics engineers. And 2, unit tests would be better if they were supported by DBT natively. Now, if you open up one of the most popular DBT feature requests of all time, you might just have to come work here to build it. In August of last year, Michelle, who's sitting in this room and now a software engineer at DBT Labs, opened up a new GitHub discussion with a proposed spec inspired by the community conversations, and your excitement and feedback flooded in. Thank you to all of you who commented on GitHub, who developed the original packages, as well as the 100+ of you that joined us in January for our community feedback session. In our 1.8 release earlier this year, we delivered a standard unit test framework to the DBT community. All right, so we're going to help out this wedding company with their DBT project. So let's see if we can use this new unit test functionality to help improve their code reliability. So we will go ahead and query their fact weddings model just to make sure that my vow renewal ceremony is on the books. And I'll be able to see it show up here. Great, vow renewal, Coalesce stage. Except that's weird. I actually requested the Elvis add-on, but I'm not seeing it add up. So let's see. My logic for add-ons here is evaluating if my package type is exactly equal to the string add-on, all lowercase. But if I take a look at their packages model, which has a row per package the wedding company offers, I can see that the Elvis add-on has a package type of add-on with a capital A and a capital O. So thankfully, I can use the new unit test functionality to add a unit test for how I would expect this logic to behave. So we'll go ahead and create this in a YAML file in my project. And I'll go ahead and give the unit test a name. Test add-on seems pretty good, as well as a description. And I'll specify the name of the model that I want to unit test. Now, the real meat of this test is the inputs and expected outputs. So we'll see those here. So for each direct parent of my fact weddings model, I'm going to define a set of mock input data to capture all of the edge cases that I can think of. So in this case, I'll do packages that are add-ons, all lowercase, as well as those with mixed case, and packages that are not add-ons. And then, when I run this model using these static inputs, rather than the full production data, what do I expect the output to be? Now you'll notice that I only have to write input data for the columns that I care about, which means this unit test can be succinct and specific. All right, let's give it a run. So I'm going to go ahead and do a dbt build for my fact weddings model. And this is going to first run that unit test. Now we know my logic, right, is currently not working, so I expect this to fail, which means that everything else downstream is going to be skipped. So my model is never going to be materialized. My data tests are never going to run. And this ensures I'm not wasting warehouse compute by building a model that has incorrect logic in it. If we look at the logs here, I can see my problem, the wedding ID 2, which has a null value being returned. I expect it actually to be add-on mixed case. So we can go ahead and fix this logic. So try. So back over my fact weddings model, I'm going to first lowercase my package name before I evaluate whether or not it's equal to add-on. And once I've saved that, I can rerun this dbt build. And this time, my unit test should pass, and therefore all downstream steps should run as well. Finally, we'll go ahead and preview my fact weddings model one more time to make sure it's been updated with the Elvis add-on. All right, there it is. Perfect. Vow renewal, Elvis, Coalesce stage. We're set to go. Adding unit tests to your dbt project improves your developers' confidence that the code they're changing, the changes they're making, that they're non-breaking, which means we can move faster and trust more. I, for one, am very glad that they are now part of the standard. Now, I don't want to just talk about fond memories of the past, but also look ahead at what we're delivering to you today. So let's talk about some of the newest features coming to you in 1.9, which is available as a beta now. The first is a series of improvements to dbt snapshots. Snapshots are older than you might think. They were first released as dbt archive back in 0.5.1 in 2016, just 2 days shy of dbt's 6-month anniversary. Snapshots provide a solution for capturing changes to your data at type 2 slowly changing dimensions, so you can look back at time at historical states of your table. Originally, they were declared in your dbt project YAML file like this. And in 2019, they escaped the dbt project YAML file, moving to a dedicated snapshots folder and nested within these special Jinja blocks that at the time we thought was going to be the way of the future, but for a whole host of reasons, it did not really catch on. We built snapshots a long time ago. A lot has changed, and the issues that you all opened let us know that snapshots hadn't really kept up. Nesting your snapshot configuration and logic in a special Jinja block made your code inconsistent from the rest of your dbt project. Specifying a single target schema for your snapshot to build in made testing or developing snapshots really challenging, as there was no clear distinction between dev and prod. The resulting table would have a handful of dbt meta fields, like dbt valid from and dbt valid to, that you would have no control over, meaning you'd have to add bloat to your DAG by adding an additional view on top of your snapshot to customize them if you needed to. I see a lot of heads nodding with that one. Part of our responsibility of maintaining the standard is admitting that we don't always get it right. In 2023, Doug opened this GitHub discussion called Problems and Potential Solutions for Snapshots, pulling from a long list of issues and comments, letting us know the ways in which our current implementation of snapshots just wasn't cutting it. This year, we decided to prioritize a handful of those. Specifically, we wanted to make snapshots easier to configure, run, and customize. And again, thank you to all of the community members who opened up the original issues, as well as the 86 of you who registered for our feedback session back in June to let us know which of these issues mattered the most to you. I'm excited to announce that many of these snapshot improvements are available to you now in the 1.9 beta release. Yeah. All right, we're going to go back to the wedding company's project to add a snapshot to see how we can track some of their data changes. OK, so if you remember my packages data from earlier, right, we've got a row per package that the wedding company offers. Now, this data could change over time, right? For example, my Elvis package could increase in price from $300 to $400. So I want to create a DBT snapshot to be able to track these changes over time so that I can measure my trends. So I'm going to make use of the brand new snapshot spec, which is defining snapshots in YAML. And this is going to allow me to maintain snapshots as a resource type that is unique and separate from my models, but also has better consistency and organization for my code. I want to point out a couple of things here as well. I haven't specified a target schema because it is no longer required. If you omit the target schema, you can maintain a snapshot per environment, so a snapshot in dev that's different from your snapshot in prod. I've also made use of a brand new config called snapshot meta column names, and this is going to allow me to customize the names of the meta fields that DBT is going to produce. So I can go ahead and run this DBT snapshot. My logic here is just going to be select star from whatever I've put for my relation. If I wanted to have additional logic, I can put that in an ephemeral model for cleaner testing and development, and then snapshot that model. Now, if we look at my logs, we can see that this snapshot was built into my own personal development schema, so not into production. And if I go ahead and view the resulting table, I can see that my meta fields have been renamed to match the naming conventions that this wedding company wants to uphold in their project. So snapshots, these new improvements to snapshots will make tracking your data changes more consistent, customizable, and easier to test. All right. Finally, I'm excited to tell you about a brand new incremental strategy for batch-based processing. If snapshots are an old DBT feature, the incremental materialization is truly ancient. First introduced in DBT Core 0.4.1, the incremental materialization is a performance and optimization for your largest data sets that are too big to be dropped and recreated from scratch every time you do a DBT run. So instead of running a create table statement, you write some code in a Jinja block that is incremental block to filter to just the new records. And then DBT will insert or merge those new records into the already existing table that contains all of the old historic information. If anything goes wrong or your schema changes, right, you can run in full refresh mode to rebuild that entire table from scratch using that same simple query. And this works for a ton of use cases, but there's been a long discussed limitation to this approach. Some data sets are just so massive that rebuilding them in a single query is just not possible without running into warehouse timeout issues. Now, because DBT offers the flexibility to create your own custom materialization, an experimental materialization called insert by period was created back in 2018 as a further performance optimization. To build your event time models with single SQL queries, sorry, this slide deck is being a little funky for me, in a SQL query per batch rather than needing to run it all at once. Creating these custom materializations is one way that you can expand DBT to do something hard but possible. And when we see this type of experimentation in the wild, the question becomes, is possible enough? Or is this something we should spend real time and effort into making easy? And often answering this question takes time. While the original insert by period materialization was originally only supported in Redshift, it was expanded this year to add support for additional adapters. When we see this much excitement and expansion around an experimental feature, When we see people leaving dbt's framework to solve this problem rather than hacking within it, it's a clear signal to us that it's time for it to graduate to become an official part of the dbt standard. So starting in 1.9, you can use the new Microbatch incremental strategy to solve this need out of the box. All right, so let's go ahead back into this wedding company's dbt project to optimize their largest data set, their fact weddings model. All right, so I've set materialize to incremental, my incremental strategy to Microbatch, and then I've added a handful of brand new configs to tell dbt how to appropriately slice up my data. So we've got event time, which is the column that indicates at what time did this row occur, and that's going to be both for my Microbatch model as well as its direct parents. We've also got batch size, which is the granularity of my batches. In this case, I went with day. Look back, an optional look back window to capture late arriving records. I've set this to 2. And then begin, which is the beginning of time for my data for full refresh or initial builds. One other thing I did here was I set full refresh to false because I don't want to accidentally reprocess all of my historical data. I've written my SQL statement for a single batch of data, and I'm ready to give this a run. So when I run this, it is going to evaluate which batches need to be loaded, break them up into a SQL query per batch, and load each one independently. So I ran this demo on the 4th, so the 4th was today when I was doing this, and also processed the last 3 days of data because my look back is 2. If I look at the compiled code, I can see that the source has been updated to a filtered source using those same event time columns that I configured earlier. And if I want to reprocess specific old batches of data, I can do so using the new command line arguments event time start and event time end. And if one of my batches fail and I end up in a partial success state, I can use dbt retry to reprocess only the failed batches. This new Microbatch incremental strategy allows you to break up your largest data sets into smaller bite-sized batches that dbt can process individually, making your workflows more reliable, faster, and easier to manage. Now, it's not just about the big stuff. The little things matter too, and we actually tackled a lot of them this year. I'm specifically very excited by one that just went out, which is being able to document your singular tests. Thank you to everyone who commented on these GitHub issues. If there's one that's in our open source repo right now that you care a whole lot about, please continue commenting and upvoting. It's really helpful as we understand how to prioritize our backlog of paper cuts. All right, you can get access to all of these new features and fixes today using the dbt core 1.9 beta. So if you're a core user, just upgrade to the 1.9 beta. If you are using dbt Cloud, go ahead and upgrade to versionless, and then you don't have to think about upgrading ever again. All right, we got to talk a lot about our past. We reveled in the present, some of the new features that are coming today. It's almost time to renew our vows, but first, we're going to talk about our future. So if you attended our keynote on Tuesday, you'll know that we just launched support for the new Iceberg table format, which is an open standard for storing your data and accessing your metadata that promises interoperability between multiple compute engines. So you don't have to think about, do you need to choose between power, performance, portability, sort of like what dbt has done for your business logic. In the coming months, we are going to be expanding support for additional adapters and more advanced operations. Last month, we also posted a GitHub discussion called It's About Time that talked about 2 new features coming to help you better support your largest data sets. So one of those is Microbatch, which we're really looking forward to getting your feedback on ahead of the 1.9 final release. The second is something that people have been writing custom hacky solutions for quite some time. The ability to limit your data in development or CI testing to smaller time-based samples to improve your developer speed. Imagine being able to say, while developing, I only ever want to look at the last 3 days of data. We plan to build an out-of-the-box way to do just that. I'm very excited. Now, these are the 2 features that we're going to be focused on in the coming months, but there's a lot more that we are really excited about. Specifically, we've seen a lot of feature requests open under the theme of better macros, so things like being able to unit test your macros, native support for Python UDFs. But really, we want to hear from all of you. What do you struggle most with when using dbt core today? What custom solution have you had to hack together multiple times that you wish dbt just offered out of the box? Whether you use dbt core or dbt cloud or some mixture of both, we want to hear all of your feedback and thoughts. We are committed to defending dbt core's position as the industry standard for data transformation, and we want you with us every step of the way as active partners and collaborators. Oh gosh, it's going too fast. So when you solve your unique problem, please share it, whether that's in the community Slack, GitHub discussions, dbt meetups, give talks at Coalesce. It all helps us as we expand our knowledge. All right. Thank you again so much for everyone that helped us build what we built this year, and all of you who are helping shape what we focus on next. OK, so we have something old, right? Something new, something borrowed, right? And something blue. Thank you. So it is almost time for our vow renewal ceremony, but of course, I got the Elvis package. So we're going to need to welcome a very special guest to the stage.
I understand you need someone to officiate a vow renewal ceremony.
Jeremy Cohen?
Hi, Grace.
You're an Elvis officiant?
It's sort of a part-time gig.
OK. Well, I can't think of a better person to officiate this vow renewal ceremony, so.
Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Are you ready? Grace, dbt community, we are gathered here today to celebrate and honor something very special. Starting a new open source software project is one thing. Continuing the journey for this long, maintaining, sustaining, and enriching is another. Much like human relationships, open standards are fallible and imperfect. They also grow stronger with time. Grace, I understand that you've prepared some vows.
I have.
Would you like to read them now?
Yes, please. We vow that dbt core will remain open source under the Apache 2 license. We vow to read your issues and discussions and PRs, to listen to what you're struggling with, and work together to improve dbt for everyone. To be explicit about how we think about the differences between our open source and commercial offering. To communicate as quickly as possible when something is out of scope. To invite you into conversations and feedback sessions to help design features that feel like dbt. We vow that dbt is not dbt without you, the community. So whether you use core or cloud or some mixture of both, you're part of this community. Your thoughts and opinions matter to us because this is a relationship, and we want to build dbt with you for a very long time to come.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Grace, do you take this open source community to be your own and promise to sustain it as long as you have the privilege to do so?
I do.
And do you, dbt community, take this product manager and open source maintainer to be your own and promise to support her as best as you can? By the power vested in me as a person wearing an Elvis costume, I now pronounce you, Grace, and dbt community to be in happy collaboration.
Thank you so much. It's been such a joy.
Walk up music.
Thank you.